there's a give and take. So being open as an older person, you can say something like, um, what would you do if you had an extra $50,000? Now that might seem like an odd question, but what you're really digging for is what drives you. What will you work towards? What will keep you focused? And how can I help you get there? So I always tell CEOs and their managers that by asking that question, you want to dig for details.
JoAnne Marlow, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you. It's absolute pleasure.
JoAnne, you are a very interesting person in so many different ways, and I'd like for you to share right off the start, what are you an expert at? What is your expertise? What's your field?
Oh, there's so many. I think what gives me the biggest buzz is being able to analyze and come up with a core issue that a company or even a person is having, and then being able to problem solve and walk people through that whole change. I think that one of the key problems to most businesses or even people who just get stuck is they can't define the problem. And as a student in university, I just thrived on doing case studies where I had to find the problem.
So, what is it that you do exactly? Can you share that with
the
our
process?
audience? Yes. No. Yeah. What is it like if we hire you? If I hire you, what are your services? What is it that you do? What is it that you offer specifically?
Okay. Well, I offer results. So what we'll see is a bigger income as a result of me implementing my solution, and collaboration, higher productivity, probably a better culture within the organization. As you and maybe some of your listeners may not know, is I'm an expert in multiple generations in the workplace.
And that's why I have you here, because that is the reason that's the one thing that really fascinates me about you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I find it's such an interesting topic because there is such a wide range of generations that work all in the same areas. In some companies,
that's right.
The super young to the ready to retire person.
Oh, beyond that.
So what are some of the issues that you find that exist when a company has? This doesn't affect just companies. This is just in everyday life too. It's about communication, correct?
It is, and communication's always been one of the biggest issues in life.
So where does the breakdown happen?
Well, generations are typically around 20 years from their birth dates, and they typically have a situation where they've all experienced within that 20 years, they've experienced certain political situations, or they've experienced a way of being influenced by politics, crises, their parents' attitudes, that kind of thing. So we have 5 generations, and they range from 16 to 85. So even the most senior of the generations are still in business. They may be on the board of directors, they may be CEOs, they may own their own companies, they may be working for nonprofit organizations because they're very giving and serving kind of people, but also they've been brought up to be totally dedicated to their work. And if you're not dedicated to your work, then they don't approve. It's just not part of their system. So that group, and then baby boomers, which are a group from about 53 to 71 years of age right now. Typically, their parents were that older generation, or even the great generation that fought in the war, in the Second World War. So all these attitudes are coming around and having a major effect on communication. You ask what the biggest problem is other than communication? It's creating relationships. So a lot of people, I've asked CEOs, so what are the names of your staff? And I get I don't know, why is that important? And the face says, how should I know? But today, when you've got young people who are all about creating relationships through friendships, work, they want their boss to be their friend. They want social media accessible to them. And so when they don't sense that friendship, or that the boss doesn't care about them, they just said, oh, this isn't the company for me, I'm out of here.
So what would you say would be a good tip to give to, let's say, the older generation and the younger generation, so that they can sort of bridge that gap and sort of understand each other, because they're both very functional in very different ways.
Yes.
So what is, since this is your area of expertise, what would you, like, what kind of tip could you give, like, people that could use right now, just right off the bat, saying this one tip can make my communication gap a little better and easier?
I think, it really doesn't matter whether you're an older generation or a younger generation. We can all help each other learn and get more done in the day. I have some young mentors who teach me about social media, and I remember a grade 8 student, when I was teaching, was so excited because she showed me how to get onto my Facebook on my iPhone, and I was very grateful to her. I mentor university graduates on how to transfer from school into the workplace, and what is expected of them during their work, and how to do a resume, how to communicate, what questions to ask during an interview. So there's a give and take. So being open, as an older person, you can say something like, what would you do if you had an extra $50,000? Now that might seem like an odd question, but what you're really digging for is what drives you. What will you work towards? What will keep you focused? And how can I help you get there? So I always tell CEOs and their managers by asking that question, you want to dig for details. Some may want to pay off their student loans, or give their parents a trip, or buy a new car. Okay, so if it's a new car, what year is it? What color is it? What model is it? How fast does it go? Is it a sports car? All those kinds of things. What's the leather? What's the interior? What's the dashboard look like? And so what you're doing is you're creating an absolute vision of what that person wants, so that as you pass by, the CEO or manager can say, John, that was a great account you landed last night. I bet you could smell the brand new leather inside that new Audi of yours. Likewise, it helps to drive that person, and it's a personal thing.
So it's really about finding out more about what
It's like
the other person is about, what their interests are, their motives,
taking
their
the
drive,
time.
like you said.
Taking the time. And likewise, if I were a millennial, I'd want to know, what is it that made you decide to get into this career? What are the ups and downs of this business? How do you solve a problem in the business? And then the older generation can say, if you were to make one change in this company, what would it be? Because a millennial will tell you.
And so they should.
And so they should. And take no offense whatsoever in sharing their enthusiasm, their new ideas, because they're a new pair of eyes coming into the business. And the old adage of, well, we've always done it this way, just doesn't work anymore. It does not work anymore.
So the suggestion is, or the tip is for the older people to be very open-minded and be receptive to what the younger generation has to say,
Yes.
and their point of view and their opinion. But they're also much more technologically open.
Yes.
And they're not afraid to use technology as much as the older person, because it's a bigger learning curve for the older person.
But it doesn't need to be.
There's
a lot of people in their 70s and 80s who have email and use their Facebook accounts, play games, and do all of those kinds of things.
If you can learn how to drive, you can learn how to use media, right?
Yeah, if you're willing and able, you can do it.
So JoAnne, here's my other question to you. What got you into this in the first place? What got you into this whole multi-generational?
Well, Francesca, that's a really good question, and I hadn't thought about it until a little while ago when I knew someone was going to be asking me that question. I've had mentors or people in my life that have sort of set stages for me. When I was 12 years old, I had to read a biography, and it was Albert Schweitzer. And what I learned from him was he changed careers from a concert pianist at age 40 and got his doctorate, his medical doctorate, and served people in the Congo with infectious diseases. And so what I learned from that, it doesn't matter how old you are, you can always change your mind. You can always do what you really, really love. Then fast forward to a time when I was feeling so sad for my dad. And he was in his 50s and had worked for one company, which is normal for that generation, all his life. And he finally wanted to change. And because he'd only worked in one area, he was rejected because he didn't have enough skills in different manufacturing areas. And yet he had an MBA, he was a brilliant man, he got everyone to collaborate. So I thought, okay, my lesson there, change jobs often. And so I sort of developed that millennial mindset of, oh, I'm going to sample this and I'm going to sample that. And I don't know if you know, but my background is in education.
No, I did not know.
Yeah.
Tell us about your journey. Tell us the whole transition from...
Okay. Well, we go back a few generations.
That's okay. And that's why you're the expert, because you've gone through all those generations.
I have. I've experienced all kinds of stuff. So I went to Simon Fraser University, and in high school, I'd been very, very active in junior achievement as a business president, and ran my own business and had a staff, and I really surpassed all my expectations. I was the first president of Junior Achievement of Canada, and was very proud of that fact. So I was business-minded anyway. So I studied economics and commerce at Simon Fraser, and I was one of 5 women in a class of 75. So not the majority for sure. And I did well. I wasn't a scholar by any means, but I did well. And one of the rude awakenings when I went in to apply for jobs is one of the interview questions was, do you have a boyfriend?
Is nowadays is illegal.
Gee, yes.
You can't ask that question.
No. And is it serious? And I, being smart aleck that I was, 21 years of age, I said, that's an odd line of questioning for a job. I said, do I need a partner to get this job? Oh, no. I said, well, what's the relevance then? And, you don't necessarily talk to interviewers that way, but I did because I was very curious and a little taken aback that they would ask me such a personal question when I was looking at a position in marketing or human resources at that time. And they said, well, if you've got a boyfriend, you're going to change jobs. You're going to leave. You're going to leave and raise a family. And I said, I had done my homework. And I said, the average length a man is going to stay in a company is 2 years. And if you and I are the right match, I can guarantee I'll stay a lot longer than 2 years. But I didn't have success. That was heartbreaking. And so I went back to university and got my teaching certification.
What do you mean you didn't have success? What do you mean by that?
I was too much of a risk. They didn't want to hire a young woman who could possibly get married and have kids and not be dedicated to a company. And the people interviewing me were those dedicated, silent generations who, what? Women in business? I don't think so. I had lots of interviews. I had some great success, but the pay was ridiculous. It was half of what would be paid to a man. And I had done my research. So the job that I did get, I went back to university, and then I thought, okay, if I'm teaching business in high schools, I need to know what it's like to work in a business, right? So I did get a marketing research job, and thank goodness the employer was very open, and he asked what salary I wanted, and I told him. I said, well, my cohorts at Simon Fraser are earning this, and I said, I expect that. He said, okay. I thought, yes! So
You're getting paid what you were worth.
Absolutely.
And you asked for it. You weren't afraid to ask for it.
No.
Good for you. Good for you. Because I find that a lot of women tend to be afraid to ask because they think that people will not pay them what they're supposed to be paid.
That's right. Finding what you're worth. I can honestly tell you I was a whole lot more confident way back then than I am as a baby boomer and living in the workplace now. Life happens, right? So I taught high school, and I taught marketing, entrepreneurship, career and personal planning. And during that time, my parents moved away, and I was left to sort of survive on my own. I had to find my own job. I had to buy my own car, sign a lease find a roommate, all that kind of stuff, do my first income tax. And I thought, how come nobody taught me this stuff? So the very first book that I wrote was when I was 22. And I looked at
young.
Well, I had a goal. I thought, kids don't need to know about industries right now in grade 12. Who cares? They can read that. They can watch TV and find out that lumber
So how
and
many
fish.
books have you written? Because I know you've got a few books.
I do. So a lot of them are curriculum based. I've just finished my 10th book.
Yes. Tell us about your book.
Well, one of the things that I've been researching all the generations for decades. And when Boom, Bust, and Echo came out, I was really, really interested in that book by David Foote. And the Echo is now called the Millennial Group. And then there's all kinds of fear. When we hit 2000, people were so afraid of the millennials are coming, the millennials are coming. And I thought, what? I've been teaching people from 12 to 85. And there are so many commonalities between the generations that's what I focus on. But a lot of people are truly not even aware there are different generations, different ways of thinking or working. So I came up with, I wanted a powerful book that would be able to be read in a couple of hours while the CEO was on a plane. So I came up with 25 powerful strategies to hire and successfully retain millennials. And I started it in February of this year, and it was published in June. So it was a really quick...
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was a quick write, and edited at least 8 times.
Wow.
And what I figured, okay, we need to have those strategies. So every chapter has a strategy or a tip. And then, why is this important? And then insights. So there might be all kinds of ideas on how to implement that strategy into your business. And that's where I love throwing out my creative ideas. And some people go, oh, I never thought of that. And others thought, may have thought, well, we've been doing that for years. So, but the thing is, and then there's areas for you to write in your action steps after you read the chapter. And the chapters are short and double spaced so that anybody can read it. And within the first week, it made a bestseller in human resources management and also business ethics.
Congratulations.
So it's available on Amazon, and I'm really proud of this.
Well, congratulations. You should be.
Thanks.
You have a website where people can come visit you? If people want to reach you, how can they get a hold of you?
Yes. My company name is Systems for Engaging Teams, and you can reach me at that address. So it's www.systemsforengagingteams.com.
That is awesome. So going back to your journey.
Yes,
I
yes.
didn't forget that.
No, that's okay.
So now you're an entrepreneur.
Now I am.
Now you're an entrepreneur. So that's where I really want to know, what made you do that jump? What led you to be an entrepreneur? Because you were teaching, you were working for other companies for several years.
Yes.
So what was that point where you go, okay, I'm going to start my own business? Was that something you were inspired to do? Did you go, oh, I'm going to do this? Or was it something that you felt you just had to do it because the situation was like in my personal case, I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. Whenever I worked, it was for other people. It was not for myself. And then I found myself in a situation where I had no other option. If I wanted to eat, I had to make income. Nobody was hiring me. So I became an entrepreneur and I started my own business. So that's how it happened for me. So I'm curious. I don't know your story. So how did you make that jump from corporate employee to being an entrepreneur? And how was that transition?
It was hard. I left teaching. I went into corporations and I was managing 2 different divisions for a worldwide organization here and located in Vancouver. And, learning about yourself is probably one of the most important things. Like when I'm talking or mentoring young people, actually it doesn't matter what age they are, learning as much as you can about who you are and what your strengths are. So I've read lots of books on self-assessment. I did the Strengths Finder, which is fabulous. You buy the book, you do this Strengths Finder assessment, and I just thought, I can use some of those terms in my resume and my letters, but also I learned how to describe who I was. So by finding out who I was, I didn't like that management job anymore. I felt somewhat like a misfit, and I left. And I went back into a position in the school district where I wasn't a manager, I was a leader. And I led a number of huge programs for our school district and for British Columbia, and wrote a number of books at that time. I think having started in business at SFU, I always wanted to be in business. And in my 40s, I always wanted to get my master's, so like my dad. And so I got a master's in leadership at Royal Roads University, and that changed my life. I learned how to love to learn again. And I still practice some of the things that I learned there. I've solved problems for the companies I worked for. I can do that really, really quickly, and so when my teaching career ended, it ended because I was transferred up north with my husband and thought I would have a job and didn't. I taught, one semester or one class at the college, that kind of thing, but to me, it was a huge disappointment. I felt like a fish out of water there, and over the 5 years, even though I made fabulous friends, I was part of the Chamber of Commerce there, I just didn't feel me anymore. And so I moved back to North Vancouver, where my kids were and my father, and I moved back alone. So after 37 years of marriage to a very wonderful man, our marriage ended. And that was really hard because I wasn't working.
It happened all the same time.
It did. I moved here, no job for me. I was too old to go back into the school district, apparently. And I did work. I did teach at Simon Fraser University for about 3 years, which was wonderful. But again, it was just bits and pieces. And I thought, I need something more stable than that. I want to return to that confident, wonderful, high-energy young woman I was when I was 18 to 20-something. And so I had to reassess who I was, what I could offer. And it's taken me much longer than I thought to finally say, this is what I'm really good at. I know the generations inside and out. This is probably the first book that has been part of my heart rather than part of a curriculum. I'm doing presentations for HR managers who are wanting to develop their expertise, and I'm looking forward to developing more clients who want me to come in, do an assessment, and that kind of thing. So it's been a struggle.
You said something that really resonated with me, and I think that people who are watching this or listening to this will appreciate. And so I'm just going to go to that point.
Okay.
And you said it's taken me a while it took me a while to figure out what I'm good at, and I think a lot of people have this impression that the people that know what they're good at, they've always known what they're good at, and you're just putting out there, you're just sharing that this has been a process, even though you've done, like, with all your experience and all that you've been doing, and sharing that part, that it's taking you a while to figure out what you're really good at. It's so encouraging to hear, and it's so important that you shared that. So I'm glad you shared that, because, like I said, I think many get this impression that, you know, if you're good at something, you should just already know, and it's not always that obvious. For some people it is, but it's not that obvious. So it's okay when it takes time, and not to give up, because if you don't know what you're good at, that doesn't mean you're not good at anything.
Oh no,
that there is something. You just have to go through that process.
That's right. Especially young people that I've mentored, they just are at a loss. I've had students come to me in tears. I don't know what I do. And
isn't that everybody? Don't you think that almost every
human
being goes through
I'm
that?
sure I was that a few years ago.
Everyone's supposed to do it.
Yeah, will you tell me what I'm good at, Francesca? No. It really, you have to dig down, and I do a mind map. And that is wonderful, where you've got me in the center, and then all these bubbles coming out of the things that you're really good at.
I learned to do mind mapping only about 4 years ago. Like I'd seen it done, diagrams and bubbles and all, but I never thought of them as a form of exercise to do my brain dump. And it's just amazing.
Isn't it?
Like you're lost and you don't know where to go, and you just start putting it on paper. It makes all the difference. So thank you for bringing that up, because it's a really good exercise.
It's one of the things I still use when I go in and assess a business. I look at, after I've questioned everyone and interviewed everyone, I set up some of the key repeated issues that they all have, and then I spin off of that. Or I use a big whiteboard, and each column is an issue that has been repeated by the staff, and so I put those across the top, and then I use Post-its. So all these colorful things, if communication across the board might be blue, and orange might be culture or whatever it might be, but it gives me a visual of what needs, if there's a whole pile of orange ones on there, that's the problem I'm going to deal with first. Even though that may not be the core issue, it's going to be some of the symptoms that have been affected. So you mind mapping that? That does help, doesn't
Yes,
it?
yes, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So you work primarily with corporations, or do you work with small businesses as well?
I like to work. I like to say I work with companies that have at least 5 managers. So whether it's team development or collaboration or communication or multiple generations, and one of the biggest and most costly effects of today is turnover expenses. So I think a lot of businesses that are really small they'll look at a resume and go, great, can you start tomorrow? Or have you ever worked before? Or can you use a cash register? Or can you talk nicely to customers? Restaurants and retail that young people typically go to, it's just a mere stop off before they figure out what they want to do. Young people are using their entire 20s, in many cases, not all, to experiment. Do I like this one? Is this better? How about that? What kind of people do I like to work for? In my next book, I'm addressing that, how to figure that out before you go into the workplace. And, I think that's so key.
Is that so that you ensure a longer employment term?
Yeah.
You retain your
Instead of 6 months, it'll be more like 3 years. And a company that's hiring a young person in their 20s or early 30s that does stay 2 to 3 years, they're doing something right. Yeah, they are.
That's it, not longer than that.
No, and so the world is changing. And employers need to say, well, they're not dedicated. Oh, yes, they are. Give them a challenge. Listen to them. Listen to everybody. Find out what their big driver and dream would be. If they landed a big account, or if they worked X number of hours, or they knew what they wanted, they wouldn't be sick. They'd be attending every single day. And this goes for teachers too, who have mental health days, and people who, companies that offer mental health days or sick days, why is that? They could very well be eliminated if there was conversation. How can I help you to get your goals? How can I mentor you to get to that next step in the business? Would you like to try that department? Well, I can arrange you to go side by side with the manager for a week and see if maybe that might interest you. And chances are, even if a young person should leave to go and get experience somewhere else, if you are a wonderful, incredible, emotionally intelligent employer, they just may come back to you with more expertise and offer you everything you've ever dreamed of in an employee.
So much information. Excellent information.
Thank you.
Wonderful information. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Francesca.
For sharing your story. I know it's not easy to share something, so
Yeah.
Once again, your website for people want to.
It's www.systemsforengagingteams.com. And my book is on Amazon.ca as well as in the US.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you. I'll give you a hard time. Okay.